FLOTE.app.
What is up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Rico, the Vines, also known as Ricky Vance, and a great episode for you today. Today we have founders and creators of FLOTE.app. It's a new social media platform. I call it a social media platform, but it's kind of a little bit of Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. It's all those things combined. You can receive and send cryptocurrency. You can stream live. You can bring all your videos or your Facebook pictures and posts, transfer it all there, sync it all there, so that way you kind of have a backup account if something ever happens to your YouTube page or Facebook page and you're worried about losing all that content. You'll have it all backed up on Flote. It's an amazing censorship-free, free speech promoting platform. When you get to know the people behind it, you'll see that they're truly passionate about these issues. They're not going to use your information. They're not going to lie to you. They're not going to sell your info to make money off you. It's an amazing platform, and it's amazing to be able to support people like this. I have a personal page on there, Ricky Varandas. I also have a Ripple Effect Podcast page on there, so follow those two accounts. Also follow the Union of the Unwanted, which is my other show I do with Sam Tripoli, Charlie Robinson, and Midnight Mike from the OBDM show. We have a Flote page also. You can find the Flote app on Androids. You can find it on Apple phones, so it's super easy to find, super easy to use, and I'm sure you guys will enjoy it and want to at least explore it after this conversation. So I'm really excited to bring this conversation to you. We also talk a lot about cryptocurrency, so I finally do a show on Bitcoin. A lot of people have been asking me to talk about Bitcoin, so we can explain what is it, how does it work, how does it have value, all these type of things. So we get into that and some of the ideology behind it and why people like it and want to promote it. So overall, just a fun discussion. Also, I'm trying to create this value for value system where if you get some value out of the show, try to give some value back in return. It doesn't have to be financially. Rate the show, review the show, share the show, all that type of stuff helps. We even have people who are making clips of the show. Most of us podcasters hate listening to ourselves and can pick up on all our flaws and all the things we don't like about the way we talk. So it's hard to listen to the whole show again, find the time, and also go through the torture of listening to yourself. So people who do listen to the show and you can cut out those clips that really stick out, maybe a really important part of the conversation or something that stuck with you after the show that you remembered, that you think is a great way of getting people exposed to the show. A lot of people don't want to spend an hour or two listening to a show, but if they hear an interesting clip, it will give them the motivation to invest that time to listen to the rest of the show. So I know some fans, people like Soundwave Promotions have been doing it, and it's awesome. It helps us out a lot because we can share those little clips, and they use apps like Headliner, which you can get on your phone, and you can get the podcast on there, cut out a little clip and share it. And if you do that, I have a playlist for Ripple Effect Podcast clips. I will put it in there in that playlist on my YouTube channel. And that way it can promote your channel and also helps me out because it gets these clips out there. So it's a win-win. Also, I have a Patreon page. If you can support the show financially, please do. I'll let you know in advance who I'm booking, who I'm collaborating with, all that type of stuff. Most importantly, what I started doing recently is I started doing Patreon podcasts. So a podcast only with my Patreon supporters. I end up releasing it. I actually just released the first one on my last episode. So if you want to be on the next Patreon podcast, join Patreon. Even if it's just $1 a month, you can be a part of the conversation. It's a great way of myself connecting with the listeners and also the listeners connecting with each other, because I think in these crazy times, it's nice to know that other people are thinking like us and feeling like us. I think it's an important project. It's an important podcast to do and bring people together. And I think people really enjoyed it and got a lot out of it. I also have a merch store, the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com. Get some merch. You can support the show that way, and you can rep the show that way. That's another great way of supporting the show. I also have a PayPal account if you want to tip the show. Everybody who has, thank you so much. And you can find all those links in the show description. My Float account, Twitter, Instagram, Parler, Odyssey, Library, YouTube, Facebook, all those links will be in the show description regardless where you're watching the video. And I think that's it. So enjoy the show about Bitcoin, about big tech, about the future of technology and social media platforms, censorship, all those things and more. And I will talk to you guys in the next one. Peace. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no
Thanks
problem.
for having us.
Hey, what guitars do you have behind you there?
Well,
There you go.
a couple. I got just a couple of them that I messed around with. My favorite ones in that case right there. That's like one of my first nice ones. It's the Dimebag Darrell Washburn guitar.
Oh, nice.
So it's probably beat up quite a bit. I haven't opened it in a while because it was like the one that I played all the time and just beat the crap out of. But yeah, that was one of my favorites because I don't even think the Washburns eventually they stopped making the Dimebag Darrell. I think somebody else ended up making them. I don't know if it was Dean or somebody else, but yeah, that's one of my favorite ones. Are you guys into music or metal?
Yeah, I've been playing guitar since like I was a young little boy, but on and off. But I just got a new Fender Jaguar guitar. I love Fender, and then I have the Taylor acoustic, and I picked up a little 50-watt Marshall amp that actually is really really nice. So
yeah, I've had quite a few musicians on here. I don't know if you're familiar with like Fear Factory. Burton C. Bell's been on here from Fear Factory. All That Remains. Guitarist Mike Martin's been on. He's actually from my town. Mike Martin from Ludlow, Massachusetts, where I'm from, and just a couple of musicians are interesting to me. I feel like if the music's intriguing, then chances are the person behind the music's intriguing. It's not always the case, but I knock on wood, I've been pretty lucky that all the musicians I've had on that I thought would make for a good conversation have been really just interesting people. Some were like giveaways that they're going to have something more to say in regards to not just music. Like there's this band 1 Minute Silence, and I always the way I describe them is they're kind of like the Rage Against the Machine from Ireland, like super style, but just with the Irish accent. And I'm 35, so I kind of grew up in like the new metal era a little bit, and they were kind of a part of that whole genre when that was kind of growing. And they really were one of those first bands that really got me like politically thinking about things, just because they were so many like historical events and all these metaphors that like were linked to historical events in their music. So I was always just intrigued with like reading people's lyrics and like, what are they writing about? What are they trying to say? What's the meaning of the song?
Yeah.
So they would get me down some really interesting rabbit holes. So I think music and comedy is a great way of getting a message out without offending anybody. You know what I mean? Like you could something as a comedian, you could be opinionated and nobody gets upset. But if you're
at least that's the way it used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Now, if you do anything, they'll put you on The View and make you apologize.
Yeah. I mean, look what's happening today. I mean, it's just like I was at the Hartford rally. So somebody that I've become friends with throughout the years, Brian Festa, he's from the CT Freedom Alliance and We the Patriots USA. They're two organizations that kind of fight back against like mandatory vaccines and mandatory masks. Not now mandatory masks. At the time, that wasn't even an issue at the time. But he puts together these rallies in Hartford. He's a constitutional attorney. And so I was down there today. And he wanted me to go down there and support, and it was awesome. It was a great event. It was just like a lot of people. It was nice to see. First of all, it was nice to see a lot of people without masks all together in a group. It felt normal for a little bit, but I think one thing about a lot of people that kind of go against the grain, and I guess this will lead into your company Float, is that a lot of us feel like we're on an island, maybe not myself, because I spend a lot of time networking with people that are thinking alike or are thinking outside the box. But I think a lot of people do have that feeling of like, okay, I'm watching the news, I'm on Facebook, I'm on YouTube, I'm on all these, just mainstream platforms, and everybody just seems to be in agreement that I'm a crazy person, and so when you go to these events and you see like, okay, there's all these people who are thinking alike and feel the same way, I think it's super important. It gives you like a sense of like, okay, I'm not going crazy, like there is something wrong here. And like yesterday I did my first so as a podcaster, and this, I guess, well, another thing I want to talk to you guys about cryptocurrency, because I get a lot of people asking me like, how come you haven't done a show on Bitcoin, or you haven't done a show? And I'm like, you're right, I probably should, and I think a lot of people in the alternative media community can relate to Bitcoin. I still don't get the Bitcoin carnivore thing. Like, what's up with have you guys run into that? That like, I just had
yeah, that's someone in our network. That's Tone Vase. I think it's just a networking thing, and I think it's also a way for him to also make money too. So
what is it? Just like the carnivore diet and
it's basically they go to steakhouses and they talk crypto.
Oh, okay.
Sounds manly. That sounds like a manly thing to do. And
Yeah.
Sounds like
well, I do the keto thing, and I've done a lot of the, I've had Dominic D'Agostino on, and I've even had Sean Baker on, who's kind of big in the carnivore diet. I've done a lot of stuff on the keto diet in regards to, just like how we've been lied to about what we should be eating in the food industry and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, it was a weird relationship, because some people, I was talking to a buddy of mine recently, and he's like, yeah, a lot of people in Bitcoin are doing the carnivore diet. And I'm like, really? I'm like, where's the relation? But it's just,
yeah, I don't know. It's like that whole thing is weird to me, like charging people to like eat dinner with you. Like,
they do.
Well, if it's like
that's what it basically, that's what it is. They charge people to eat dinner with them and like come and like talk crypto over a nice steak.
Yeah.
And that's always just felt very weird to me, because it's just like, well, let's just go to Yard House and get a beer and just chat crypto without paying $150.
That's because we don't monetize everything that we should monetize. Like we've been running the Las Vegas Bitcoin meetup since 2014, and we're I would say probably overly generous with our time and stuff like that. But we love it though,
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like we love building communities,
like
having
helping
events.
People set up wallets and like tell them why they should invest in crypto, and tell them why we're invested in crypto and how it's changed our lives. And
like ultimately, are we recording just for the show right now, or okay, cool, great. So we can just so like ultimately, like I got into like Ron Paul and started learning about like the Fed in 2007, and then when I took a deep dive into crypto and really understood it in 2013, bought my first, started buying Bitcoin at $20, built my first crypto company in 2013. And and then, Las Vegas Bitcoin meetup, 2014. And ultimately, like, it's always been, yes, like it's the making money aspect is phenomenal, and just the economics behind it and the thought process behind.
But let's break out of this oppressive monetary financial system that we're in, and Bitcoin is the answer, and crypto is the answer to that. So it's so much bigger than just like increasing your portfolio. It's actually like freely transacting with other individuals peer-to-peer without a freaking middleman telling you what you can and cannot do with your money. Like when I try to send a bank transfer to somebody and the bank is like, oh, I need more information, it's like, fuck you. Why do you need that information? Why do you need like someone's name, address, birthday, the name of their first child? Like that's not necessary if I just want to send a transaction.
And you can't send this amount over this. Like I just had someone try to send me some money yesterday for investment, and it was like, oh, you can only send this much, this high net worth individual. It's like at what point do we give all this control over to regulations and government and this banking cartel? And I just see that
obviously we're a little passionate. Sorry for the outburst.
And so and just if you really study just the government control and regulations and where they ultimately get their power, it is because they control and own the printing press. And so with cryptocurrency, it provides this financial opt-out for everybody. Whether like right now, what's really exciting is that institutions are now getting into it, because they might not be able to come out publicly and say, hey, I disagree with the government in this or that, or this regulation or that, because they have to kind of like, they don't want the IRS breathing down their necks. They don't want politicians breathing down their necks.
And they have to tiptoe.
And so now they have this, they realize that there's this financial opt-out where they can hedge their bets with the, fiat money system and get into cryptocurrency. And I just think it's a really exciting time. And we've been waiting, we've been waiting for this moment for a while, and we're finally here. I'm not sure, this probably, hopefully this is like the last run up, and we just, in a couple of years, we're all just shifted into
and
crypto.
The Fed.
Yeah, but it's great to see like how crypto has performed and Bitcoin has performed during all this chaos happening in the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, just really crazy times, exciting times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been saying that a lot on the podcast too. In some cases, some of the change we've seen in the last year or so has been good. In many cases, I think, there's obviously been a lot of shitty things that has happened and kind of been going in the wrong direction. But I think in some things have gone in the right direction. I mean, cryptocurrency, a lot more people are taking it more serious now than I feel like they have in the past. I think, it's even when Bitcoin first started getting popular, the idea to me was fascinating. Like, I think, like, regardless what people think about cryptocurrency or Bitcoin, specifically, if it's a good investment or not, whatever, like, to me, like, I don't really care. I mean, I'm like you guys, like, all my stuff's open source. It's everywhere. Recently, not too long ago, actually, after you guys were on the Union of the Unwanted, now the podcast is on Flote, it's on Odyssey, it's everywhere. I tell people, like, just post anywhere you want. These conversations are much more important than me getting the clicks or whatnot. So I'm like you guys. I like the idea of, like, the bigger picture, the greater good. And yeah, financially, it's never, it's not the best route at times, but I think
this info needs to be accessible.
Yeah, I feel like it's like almost like maybe you don't monetize initially as much as you should or want, but I feel like the karma points add up, and eventually, as long as we're all, good people with good intentions, eventually, we've seen that happen with us, where things just all of a sudden materialize out of nowhere because, we built these relationships or we've done these little things here or there. So yeah, ultimately, yeah, I think it all equals out.
I think people see that, right? Like, people will appreciate your honesty, and you're sincere, and you actually care about the product and what you're doing. It's no different. I kind of see it as like the mom and pop restaurant, compared to going to it. Like, I'm very much for, like, going to the mom and pop place, and very much anti, like, big box store or chain restaurant or whatnot. We never go out to eat. To me, it's like, let me give my money to somebody who will appreciate it, who's a part of the community, somebody that I know and maybe will meet, and I like what they stand for or who they are as a person. So I think that's actually, the route that people were going prior to 2020. Like, mom and pop places were pop. I live in Massachusetts, and like around every corner there was like a new coffee shop or a little mom and pop restaurant or pizza place or whatnot, and I loved that. Like, it was great to be able to go to those places. They care much more about the product they're putting out. I can actually see the owners, and I know the people who are working there. It's always the same people, and you establish relationships. And then 2020 kind of just like blew that all out of the water, and they're like, well, fuck little mom and pop places. We're going to put them all out of business and then give you only one option, and that's the big corporate companies. Yep. Yeah, without a doubt, I think one thing I love about your company, and when I got to meet you guys, I mean, one, we have some mutual friends, Josh from World Alternative Media, great guy, and I've gotten pretty close with him, and Tim and all those guys, and to me, it's like when I get to meet the people behind the platform, and I like them and they seem sincere, you're much more willing to want to support them and put it out there. Jeremy from Odyssey is the same way. He really seems like he's very anti, censorship and all those things. And but your platform is unique because it almost takes all the things you like from all the platforms and puts it in one place. One, you guys have an app, which I'm still like stunned that like these other platforms don't have an app, because I mean, as humans, like, it's always the path of least resistance. We'll go down that path. We're lazy, most of us, and we want to find the easy way of doing things. So even though putting a URL isn't that much work, clicking an app is just a tad easier. So I'm going to click on the app instead of going to the website that I have to type in a URL. But so let's go right to the beginning. You guys, how did you guys meet with this idea of starting I guess a company, a business, or was this way before? How did you guys meet, and how did that lead into starting Flote?
So yeah, so so we have our story. We actually met. I was living in Toronto, and I got into Bitcoin, started my first crypto company out of my mom's basement. And I actually started that company because I was supposed to take over, or get more into management of my stepfather's construction business in Canada.
That's
And
what
then I realized, sorry?
That's what I do. I do construction.
Oh, okay, yeah. So then I realized I'm a Florida boy, and I lived in Vegas most of my life. So I was like, okay, wait a second, Canada, it's really cold here, and it's like dark and dreary, and it's cloudy most of the year. I was like, I got to do something to get the hell out of here. So then I was like, okay. So I got into crypto. I moved back to Vegas, and while I was in Canada, I met some really cool people that started the Toronto Bitcoin meetup. And when I came back to Vegas, I was like, well, it'd be really cool to, recreate that type of community feel and talk about Bitcoin, talk about merchant adoption, talk about all the new tech coming out, in Vegas, and that what really wasn't here. There was like a smaller group, but it wasn't really, doing much. They weren't really doing like monthly or weekly meetups. So when I was thinking of doing that, it was kind of the perfect time, because this hotel, the D downtown, they announced, it was in, like the local news, that they were going to start accepting Bitcoin, and they had like a Bitcoin ATM there. So I called the D and I said, hey, I want to throw a Bitcoin, Las Vegas Bitcoin meetup there, the first one.
And I answered and I said, okay, please hold. And I went on Google and I Googled Bitcoin for Dummies. And then we threw our first Bitcoin meetup together in 2014.
Yeah.
And then we started dating a year later. And then he's just taught me everything I know about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And I quit my 9-to-5 to kind of join him on the entrepreneurial journey and lifestyle. And one thing led to another. We saw what big tech was doing to our friends and who are content creators. I mean, we knew that we had to step inside and throw a hat in the ring and say, okay, like, what do we have to do to combat the censorship? There really aren't any alternatives that have the functionality that we want or that we are looking for. So let's build our own and really listen to our community and build what our community wants.
Yeah. So actually, Josh was a big part of that. He spent 6 years building up his YouTube channel. We were there when he finally hit 100,000 subscribers. Mm-hmm. Then he was quickly going to like 125,000 subscribers. I think he hit like 150 something. But then, he did like an interview with David Icke at Acapulco, and all of a sudden he noticed like his stats started going down. And then he started getting demonetized. And then we saw this with our other friends like Dan Dix. So yeah, it's just, it got to the point, like as a researcher too, I would use these tools like Google and YouTube to do research and listen to independent journalists. And, as year went by, basically, ever since like when Alex Jones was deplatformed, I noticed that like things weren't popping up like they used to, or YouTube was recommending, CNN or Fox News or MSNBC,
the mainstream media channels.
When I don't follow them, so why would it recommend that? When you autoplay on YouTube, all of a sudden it would start playing. Like I don't subscribe to these people. You can't even block channels on YouTube. A lot of people don't even know that. So at least with the big player, or the
mainstream media
channels. Which I find is like, okay, you're YouTube, you don't have a block function for these channels. Like, doesn't make sense. So, and then in 2018, actually, I tried to switch over from all centralized apps to more decentralized and like alternative apps, and they just weren't there. And so, like Erin mentioned, they didn't have kind of the things that we were looking for. So at the time, we were actually working on another crypto company, or more crypto focused company, where we were developing a crypto wallet that was focused on privacy coins, and to make it easy to use with all these, like Monero and Zcash and other ones.
Privacy coins, yeah.
But then I was like, hey, like this is like a really big concern. It's actually terrifying what's going on, especially seeing our friends and independent journalists that I've been following for years since Ron Paul days have to change the words they say just to cover current events. use code words. It's like very Orwellian. So what is the alternative? I mean, really, we have to build alternatives for what I call like small tech or alt tech when it comes to a bunch of things when it comes to software and hardware solutions, because we're all stuck on Apple and Google and Microsoft and all these big tech companies that are obviously colluding and have created some sort of cartel. They seem like part of government agencies or whatever now, and so we have no other choice. I mean, tech is one of our weapons, just like cryptocurrency, one of our weapons for for the small guy. Like I just posted like a meme on Float last week where it's like David and Goliath, and David has Float on it, and then Goliath has big tech on it. And really that is what tech means to me. Tech is a tool, and it can really empower the individual. And that's what we're set out to do with Float, is to create tools to empower individuals to be able to communicate with each other, and also to be able to pay for things. We're creating these peer-to-peer payment channels with cryptocurrency. And so by creating these using encryption technology, blockchain technology, we can really create a more efficient and free and more prosperous world that isn't reliant on these middlemen and these big tech cartels.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry for the rant.
The long-winded, but it was
The listeners are used to hearing me talk, so I like when somebody else takes the lead. But yeah, without a doubt, I mean, what you're saying is so important. All the things you're saying, because one of the most important things about like somebody like myself, I've been doing my show since 2013, and way before that, I was researching and just trying to learn more about the world around me and what going down some rabbit holes and seeking truth and or whatnot. And you could do that on Google. You could do that on YouTube. You literally could type in and James Corbett, who's a friend of mine, been on the show a bunch of times. He talked about how his Federal Reserve movie, Century of Enslavement, you can put in the exact title, and sometimes what would come up would be that documentary on somebody else's channel that had less views, which makes no sense. Why are they doing that? Why are they not directing me to his channel, which has millions of views? But it was obvious that certain things were being suppressed. And like you said, when they're colluding together, when like what happened to Alex Jones, why it's important is because it showed how they all work together, because overnight he just disappeared from the face of the earth, from all.
And that was the tester, right? That was like, okay, we're going to use this individual who is so controversial that maybe people just won't care, and we're going to see people's reactions. And like, he really was the test case for online censorship.
Well, what people don't realize is that right now you're okay with censorship because they're censoring people who are saying things you don't agree with. But one day, people that you do agree with are going to be censored. And then what? It's going to be too late. And, back in the day when you look at like TV, you always felt like things were kind of balanced out a little bit. You had MSNBC for people on the left. You had Fox News for people on the right. And then you had CNN for idiots. And so everything was like balanced out. And now it's like, it's quite obvious that things aren't balanced out. And I'm a political atheist. I don't, I've had people like Roger Stone on my show. I've had people on like Professor Richard Wolff, who's a Marxist scholar and historian, so I explore everything. Greg Palast has been on my show. So it's like, to me, I like just exploring ideas and to come up with my own conclusions. But if you control the information I'm using, then you control my ideas. You can control my conclusions. And that's the thing. It's like these terms that people into conspiracy theorists, for lack of a better term, we're using, like, oh, they're brainwashing us. It's social control, all these things, social engineering. Like, you're seeing it now. Like, it's obvious. I mean, Facebook, Silicon Valley, just in general, I mean, they hire more psychologists and psychiatrists and scientists trying to establish how to not just understand how the brain works, but how to manipulate. I mean, it's Edward Bernays. It's propaganda. It's these techniques, and so much of what, and especially people are, I'm assuming we're probably roughly around the same age. I'm 35.
Yep, same age.
Yeah. So, most of people our age and definitely younger, they don't get their news off the TV. They get their news off social media. So now you're controlling the platforms that the majority of people are getting their information.
Right.
It's like now you're literally controlling society, and that's
they're spinning a narrative, and they won't let you out of that narrative.
And they already controlled the TV and the media on the TV for so long, and then here comes this thing called the internet, And then people started communicating, you know, more peer-to-peer than YouTube and all these, you know, great social platforms. They took off because people were able to communicate and broadcast their own message and develop a following based on that.
And now say something that they don't like, and you're in a smear article on, you know, in the New York Times, or, you know, another big publication basically saying that you're a platform for Nazis. And, you know, like, it's just crazy, you know. And if you go on these platforms and you explore, like, the free speech platforms are just basically coined as radical. And it's just like, wait, when did free speech become a radical idea? The world is topsy-turvy right now.
Yeah, I remember when I had Mickey Willis on from the Plandemic documentary, and which I'm very surprised it didn't get me kicked off YouTube, but I've never monetized on YouTube and I don't tag things. So I'm like, you know, I think that's why I'm probably still on there. But because I'm like, I don't want to go in business with the YouTube. Plus, I don't really, not until recently, where I've been a little bit more focused on monetizing, hoping that I could eventually do this full time. Because I just, I don't know, obviously doing something you love for a living is, and then, you know, you'd never, what's that saying? If you find something you love, then you'd never work a day in your life or whatnot. So, but to see what he went through, you know, and he's another guy who could have monetized and didn't. You know, he put his documentary out there for free, let everybody download it, upload it wherever they wanted, and to see how it was literally being stripped out of like people's Google drives. It was being his Wikipedia page got locked. Same thing with Dr. Judy Mikovits. Her, you know, Wikipedia page gets locked. You can't find the documentary anywhere. As quickly as people are uploading it, it's disappearing. But what you can find, and this is you know, and I told Mickey this because it's a perfect example of how ridiculous this all is, that you could watch a video on YouTube. It's like, not, his documentary wasn't too dangerous to watch if somebody was narrating and calling it a debunking video. So if I was molding your opinion on what you were watching, it's okay for you to watch the documentary. I can show the documentary and give you my you know, my opinion on it and try to convince you that it's bullshit. But to watch it alone and come up with my own conclusion, that's stripped from YouTube. So I'm like, if the documentary was so dangerous, why were they letting people show it while debunking it? And it just, to me, it is sad that people are looking at alternative, and the media is doing it, like you said, Erin. Like, they're making you think that all these alternatives are just places for extremists or radical people or crazy people. But now it's the place for researchers. Like we said, like, if you go on Flote, if you go on Odyssey, if you go on BitChute, you can actually find alternative independent researchers and find the interesting stuff you used to be able to find on YouTube. And
and you know, like, there are radicals and they are extremists and there are crazy people on alternative social medias, but they're also on Twitter and they're also on Facebook and they're also on Reddit.
Radicals from the other side. That's
exactly. And so, you know, and people don't see that side because they're just so caught up in the narrative that mainstream media is putting out there.
Well, the way you fight bad ideas is with good ideas. You don't censor people. And in many times, what you end up doing, and I mean, I have two little ones, 2 kids, so I know, and I know from my own personal experience, from, you know, if you tell me not to watch something or not to touch something or whatnot, the forbidden fruit becomes much more desirable. I want, like, wait, why is this guy being censored? I want to go see what he's saying or whatnot. So to me, censoring somebody doesn't make it go away. What you need to do is, like, fight it with good ideas. So yeah, without a doubt. And so you guys, I'm not sure how the cryptocurrency works on your app and your website, but let's get into that. So Flote, how would you describe it? If people are like, okay, is it a Facebook alternative? Is it a YouTube alternative? How would you describe it? Because it is kind of a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with us is we've taken kind of all of our favorite things from all the existing platforms and put it into one.
Yeah.
So
and we're just getting started too.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, you can upload videos on there and really kind of host your video content there. You can do long form or short form posts. You can do video, audio, and images on Flote. You can do, there's a crypto Patreon feature built in, because Patreon and OnlyFans and all these big companies they take a percentage of the donations that are sent to you, and we don't think that should be a thing. So Flote takes 0 fees.
Well, that's one of the big applications of cryptocurrency that I think can bring on mainstream adoption, is showing that, hey, we can show a a profile of a person and connect them with another person, and not only can they communicate publicly or privately with each other, but they can send payments to each other with no middleman, and they can subscribe, they can conduct business. And yeah, there's no
it's a voluntary transaction.
Yeah.
And so there's a super chat feature on Flote live streams, for instance, where, again, if you send a super chat to you on YouTube, guess what? YouTube's going to take 30% of that super chat, leaving you with the rest. But Flote takes no fee whenever someone sends you a crypto super chat on Flote.
Yeah.
So there are little bits and pieces of kind of every existing platform out there, and we're going to continue that trend because the big tech platforms, they do some good things. And so we have to acknowledge that and build what people want to see on their social media platform.
Well, yeah, they've had all the money and the time to build these communities, but now I used to get pissed off when there'd be all this more and more censorship. But now, we've also built Flote, not only because it's a good thing to do, we believe, but also because there's a business opportunity, because big tech is falling apart. I mean, they're shooting themselves in the foot. They're actually fighting, they are colluding with each other, but they're also it seems like they're fighting with each other at the same time.
It's chaos.
So now's the time for small guys to come in there and build up user base, get people on their platforms, do things maybe, just a little bit differently. And instead of extracting value from people, let's provide value for people
and empower our users rather than, punish them by putting them in timeout for 20 days for a joke they made. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Thank you, Facebook, but we're adults here.
It feels like we're in a preschool.
Yeah. So I figured, hey, I have some background in tech, and social network is probably the hardest thing to try to accomplish.
So why not?
So yeah, but I'm kind of naive in a way, but also I'm an optimist, and I believe that I or anybody else can achieve really anything with just the right energy behind them, the right team behind them, and enough money. I believe that's how everything gets done. It's kind of that Steve Jobs quote where he's like, we can do anything. If you look around in any room that you're in, someone built that, someone created all that, someone thought, went from an idea to being here in the material world. And it's kind of like magic, really. And so it's just a matter of how to do that. So yeah.
But to answer your question, that was great, by the way.
Yeah.
I got chills. To answer your question about basically how crypto integrates into Flote is we have a built-in crypto wallet. Right now, it only supports Bitcoin, but we will be adding integration for other coins in the near future, including like a native Flote token. So stay tuned for that, because that's going to be
really excited,
huge. And if I want to quote Donald Trump there. So basically, you can send payments in a super chat. You can send payments through the wallet, actually making it very easy, because with cryptocurrency, there are these big long addresses full of letters and numbers, and it gets very confusing. On Flote, you can just go ahead and send a payment right to the username. So if I want to go ahead and send $5 to Kingsley, I would just go ahead and type in his Flote username King in our wallet, how much dollars I want, $5 in Bitcoin, and go ahead and send it over. It's very easy, very seamless.
And that's one of the things that we want to do with Flote, even going forward, is just we want to make crypto easy to use, because I've always felt like, I've been in it for a while now. Like 7 years in crypto is like, I don't know, 20 plus years in other industries, because it moves so fast. Mm-hmm. But I've always felt that most applications in crypto, they are getting better, but especially early on, they felt like they were built by engineers for engineers. And so we just, we need, in order to get mass adoption, in order to end the Fed, ultimately,
it needs to be as easy as Amazon.
Yeah. We need to make it, for your grandma to sign up for Flote. Everybody who signs up for Flote gets a free crypto wallet. And yeah, so we're adding a lot of utility. We're focused, I would say, long-term more on the feature set of a Facebook. because if you think about Facebook, there are many facets to it. There's just the regular social network side. There's the messaging side.
The business side with pages and groups.
And yeah, there's groups, community side. There's market, Float marketplace or whatever. And so, except that, I would say, so we're focused, but we already have some of those features. We're building the rest out. And then, but we already have like a Patreon element. We already have integrated, crypto payments. And ultimately it's, kind of Facebook-esque as far as feature set, but really kind of even like WeChat, where it's like a super app where you can do many things at a time, all through one place. So we're going to be releasing more information actually this month on more features that we're going to be rolling out. We're rolling out like with some really like cool stuff. And it's going to be a great 2021 for us.
Yeah, I know one thing that Erin talks about quite a bit, because she's proud of it, and I think she should be, is having all those little tabs with all your social, all the places that you have, a account in, and so I love that, because I'm now on. I mean, I've been on all the mainstream ones, but I'm now on a lot of the alternative ones now. So to be able to just have them all right there, where people want to find my
tool.
Yeah, it seems simple. But it's like a lot of times people are like, okay, I know he's on Float, but is he also on BitChute? Is he also on, does he have an Instagram
and everyone's
page?
across like 30 different platforms, so like we just wanted it to be as simple as possible to just list out all your links and make them clickable links. So it's just super easy. No copy and paste, none of that bullshit. Just click and go. I want to watch his video on BitTube or whatever it is. So I'm glad that you like pay attention to me enough to like notice I talk about that a lot, because it is such an underrated feature.
Yeah.
But it is like one of my favorite little parts of Float.
And we want to make Float like a comfortable and friendly to use, tool and like homepage for people as we keep integrating more, more features. And a big part of what we're doing is like interoperability. So for instance,
what I was gonna say.
we created a way for you to link your Twitter account. So when you post a Float, it'll auto post to Twitter. We created a way where you can download your Facebook data
and upload it onto Float.
Yeah, and upload it onto Float. So you can take those posts, pictures, and videos and upload it to Float. So in the case that you want to get off of big tech, or we've had friends who have been multiple times get their account deleted out of nowhere for no reason. So now you can bring those memories over to Float, and they can live on. We're going to be adding ways where you can upload a video to Float, auto upload to library and YouTube. We wanted to make it for streaming. We want to have one click where you can restream capabilities, stream to multiple platforms. We want it to be just like great communication and broadcast tool.
We want to be the antithesis of Facebook, but we want to be the collaborator with all other existing alternative platforms,
and create that bridge from big tech to now new tech or alt tech or small tech or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and those features are super important, because I mean, even the live stream thing, a lot of people complain about BitChute because of the lack of live stream, and like, so they all kind of have their issues, and you guys seem to kind of acknowledge and resolve all of those by giving people access to that. I know Matt from Content Safe, who I know you guys have gotten to know since the podcasting and Unwanted and whatnot. Like when I first heard about this idea of what he was attempting to do, I'm like, that's a great idea. So like the fact that you guys are going to do something similar where you can upload one place and go everywhere else, because why I've been hesitant to pick a platform to kind of upload to is because it can be time consuming uploading to all the alternative platforms, and you don't know which one is going to last and which one's not. So it's like you could spend a lot of time uploading videos and thumbnails and putting in descriptions, and then next thing you know, it's like nobody's using BitChute anymore, So I think that was a little bit of my danger, or my fear a little bit. And then Matt kind of took the danger away from all that, from letting us just upload to one place, and then he puts it everywhere else, which now, I have a personal Facebook page, which people who are listening, you guys have a pretty easy instruction, couple steps to how to get everything on your Facebook to your Float account. So it's awesome, because if you do want to delete your Facebook account at some point, or you get kicked off,
or just back it up,
or back it up. Yeah, I mean, it's almost like a free cloud. It's like, here's a cloud for your stuff.
Facebook is, I'm sorry, but Facebook is like the worst. But that is the one feature that I do have to commend them and applaud them for. is giving people the opportunity to download that data. And, you know, it's like very unlike them to do that.
I'm kind of surprised that even, so I remember when I was reading the instructions, I'm like, wait, I can, like, I don't have to use a third party. Like Facebook is letting me download all my information. But I mean, that kind of tells you what we think of Facebook, is that like, we're kind of stunned that they even give us that ability, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So another thing is, so on Float, I think I heard you guys say this on an interview that you guys actually don't have access or can't see what people are doing, right? There's some type of,
we couldn't read your private messages even if we wanted to.
Yeah.
So
which we
don't.
So yeah, we're using encryption technology, like I said, blockchain technology wherever we see fit. But yeah, a big thing like right now is like, you know, we move now we're Float Messenger more, but we're adding more features with Float as well, Float Chat. So but yeah, I mean, like, you know, every time someone messages me on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, I say, hey, do you have Signal? Because just, you know, I've moved probably more people to Signal. Like if they had some sort of affiliate link where I could have made money on that, I would probably be a millionaire by now. Like 99.99% of my communication is on Signal. We're trying to get Float to a place where we can have basically all the stability and features of Signal, so that now our team and even, you know, people that we can start moving them to Float more.
Right. Yeah. So
but yeah, it's just like, I don't want people spying on me. I don't want to send Erin a message on Facebook Messenger and then see an ad for something that we spoke about in our messages. These companies have been proven now to, you know, they've admitted it to reading our private messages
or transcribing voice messages, which creeps me out. You know.
So yeah, it's just creepy. I mean, even right now, I have my phone right near me, and just based on things that we're saying, you know, who knows, the mic might be listening to us, and it's, you know, I'll probably see an ad for
definitely is. Yeah.
And we don't feel that that's necessary. It's not necessary. Actually, DuckDuckGo, they released a really good blog article where they discussed how all these big tech companies are creating all these social profiles for each of their users. And in reality, it doesn't even really make much sense, because the way that DuckDuckGo goes on there with their advertisement is keyword-based advertisement, which is actually a much more efficient way to you know, still monetize, but also provide privacy for your users. So that's how we are going with, because we will have more and more ads on Float, but our goal is to have less ads than you know, especially all the big tech platforms out there.
Let's test it.
But yeah. Well,
bathing suits.
Well, that was like a crazy conspiracy theory for a while. People are like, oh, your phone's listening to you. Your phone's listening to you. And it's like, well, you know, your microphone's always on, because if I say, okay, Google, it turns on, you know? And so it means that the mics, and it just did it actually. And sometimes it just turns on when I'm not even saying that. So it's obviously always listening. And so to think that they're not using that information, and they've been proven to. I mean, there's a great video, I think you can still find it online, called "Free is a Lie," and he kind of talks about the Google Pixel and the Nexus phone and all these things, like all these free services that we call free, but what we're really doing is we're sacrificing our privacy and our personal information. And even another great timely documentary, I think it's Terms and Conditions May Apply, a good documentary. And they go into how, like, you know, you agree to this stuff. It's purposely designed, you know, the terms and that you agree to be hard to understand, to be, you know, just seem too long that you're like, you know what, let me just agree to this shit. Nobody reads it. And then they also had like screenshots or copies of how they could prove that they would change certain language in there without you knowing and without asking you to agree to it again. So because they knew people wouldn't read it anyways. So I mean, the things that we're agreeing to is just crazy. And so these companies are making tons of money off our information, and then lying to us, censoring, you know, information. So it like you said before, Kingsley, like now is the best time for this, because, you know, when I had Ben Swan on my show, we were talking about, because he also has his platform, isc.media, and you know, we were talking about how, like, now it's there's no better time for a alternative platform or many alternative platforms to grow, because people aren't, before it was like, okay, if there's a little bit of censorship, if there's a little bit of fuckery that you know, that I'm not happy with, like, it's still so convenient that I'll deal with it. But now it's gone to such a extreme level that people are seeking out alternatives. People want, because you can't, like you said, like even a lot of us who are just outside the box thinkers who want to do some research or learn about something, you can't even use YouTube. You're force fed MSNBC, Fox News, CBS.
If I were to watch this podcast and I had autoplay switched on, I believe 100% that a Fox media or a Fox News video will pop up right after yours. It's like these things don't have nothing. They have nothing in common. Like, so, you know, they're obviously just pushing an agenda.
Yeah. And yeah, just, yeah, you know, so that now it's a big opportunity, you know, like I said, it's we can do good things. We can all, you know, make a lot of money, including like content creators, independent journalists, especially, you know, I believe with cryptocurrency, removing the middleman. So you're able to, you know, small but growing, you know, be part of small but growing communities, but you're collecting 100% of the revenue you generate. And it's just, yeah, as far as like, we don't, as companies, we don't need to do all this malicious behavior towards our users, you know.
It's like abuse, honestly. It's like when
let me finish my thought.
Sorry, go ahead.
But so, you know, and we may not make, you know, as much revenue per user because we're not spying on them and all this stuff, but we can still make a lot of money. And, you know, I believe, you know, just through our financial, you know, modeling, and also reinvest that money into the, obviously the platform and into the communities that help build us. I mean, my goal is to get Flote to a place where basically it's like self-sustaining itself, and then we're just able to like reinvest in the community and get you know, have content, you know, really you know, pay back to the people that helped us build our platform up and give us that input initially. So
yeah, we just want to help. We just want to help people.
Yeah, well, nobody ever thought MySpace was going to die, right? And so, I mean, a lot of times people are like, oh, you know, like there's not going to be, you know, Facebook's going to be around forever, or they're going to dominate these things. It's like eventually, especially with like a newer generation comes. I mean, Facebook has already gotten to the point where it's not cool because your parents are on there and your, you know, your uncle and your aunt and all, you know, so they'll be looking for the new cool hip thing. So I think that works too. But I also think, you know, there's something about people like yourselves who are passionate. Like you look at, you know, we briefly started talking about music and guitars in the beginning of the show, and the best musicians, the best artists, the most successful creative people, you know, Nikolai Tesla was obsessed with his work. He wasn't even thinking about how to financially get ahead or how to extract the most money out of his ideas. He was just passionate about accomplishing something fulfilling and important. And it's same thing with music, artists. I mean, the best musicians are the songs that stick with you forever, the albums that stick with you forever, the musicians that stick around the longest aren't the people who jump on a trend and say, hey, you know, I can make some quick money if I sound like this guy or I look like that guy. It's the people who are like, you know what, I care about my work. I care about doing something important, something that I believe in, something that I can be proud of when I look in the mirror, and then everything else will hopefully fall into place. You know, you look at Joe Rogan, the biggest podcast and podcasting. I mean, he got a lot of people to give a fuck by him not giving a fuck what they thought. You know, like he literally like said, hey, you know, when people were telling him, hey, you can't do 3-hour podcasts, nobody's going to listen to it. You know, he's like, well, I enjoy what I'm doing, and I think long form conversation is important. And you know, and now look at him, you know, James Corbett, same thing. Like, you know, those have been like two of my biggest influences. When I started, I was a huge fan of James Corbett, and I've been very lucky to connect with him throughout the years. And I was a fan of Joe Rogan's long form conversation. You know, I think it's important if you're gonna talk about ideas and important things, you can't do it in small segments on Fox News, you know, or MSNBC. You know, it's like, oh, now it's a commercial break, and it's like now we have to go to the next guest, and it's like, well, I didn't get my thought out. You know, we didn't really you know, talk about it to the depth that it deserved to be discussed. And James Corbett, look at his business model. Hey, steal it, put it anywhere you want. Like, it sounds horrendous. It sounds like not a business model at all. And he's like, give me what you want to give me, you know? And so it's like, I've adopted those things because I truly believe in, like, if you just focus on doing something that you're going to be proud of, something that's fulfilling, then hopefully things will fall into place. But even if not, like, at least you can look in the mirror and be happy with what you're doing. And success is different. Like, a lot of people will look at success and think just financially. I look at success. It's like, well, are you making an impact on the world? Are you making an impact on people? Are you sparking creativity and some doing your best and leaving the world better than you received it? And to me, like, that's very important. So I love what you guys are doing, and I love the fact that you guys are really passionate, just not about just like growing a platform and making money, but the whole idea, the philosophy behind it, and really fighting back against, you know, that's the thing. Like, I like Rockfin, right? And I do like Rockfin. They're really good at monetizing things, but I don't get the sense that they're as, you know, like they don't, like, you know, I remember when I talked to them, and not to bash them because I think that it's awesome that they've given a lot of these content creators a home and a you know, a lot of content creators like myself, we are more focused on our work, and we're not very good at monetizing, and we don't really want to spend a lot of time thinking about that aspect of it, because it can get in the way of your art or whatever you're doing. But I also, like, personally, I think when I meet people like yourselves that are passionate about the censorship thing and are passionate about these issues, to me, I'm more likely to go in, you know, in that direction. Because to me, it's like, okay, well, they'll help me monetize, but do they really believe in the same things I believe in? Like, which always makes me think, like, okay, then in the long term, like, this is how they feel now, but if there's some financial reason not to go in this direction, you know, would that change? So, and I'm not saying it would, but that's why I've always been more likely to go in the direction of somebody like yourself, you know. And let's get into that, because somebody like myself who is very I just don't have much understanding of the way crypto works. I mean, I kind of understand the whole, you know, blockchain idea somewhat, but there's a lot of people listening who might not understand exactly how it works, and then how it works on your app, because then that's a whole nother thing. So for people who are like, I guess, if we can kind of dumb it down a little bit, like, what is cryptocurrency? How does it work? And you know, because people will ask me questions like that. They'll ask me, like, okay, well, who does anybody get a cut? Why is it free? How many are there? You know, how does this all work? Who decides the value of it? Could you answer some of those questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, cryptocurrency is just an alternative, you know, form of currency. It's a digital currency. Most currency, including fiat currency, is now digital anyways. So you know, yeah, it was launched now over 10 years ago.
Birthday was just,
yeah, Bitcoin, yeah, 12 years. And now there's, you know, there's thousands of cryptocurrencies out there, Bitcoin obviously being the number one, the big dog. But it, you know, it's a decentralized form of currency. So instead of having this centralized authority like the Federal Reserve or other central banks around the world, we can basically all, you know, be part of this community, this crypto community. And if you want to run a node, if you want to have a miner or whatever that helps the system to process these transactions for cryptocurrencies, then you can. So as long as there's you know, at least, you know, one basically person running the network, it can, you know, it can survive, it can exist. And so it's just it's almost like kind of the Wild West in terms of money's concerned, because back in the day, if you study money, you know, governments or people used to barter and trade, and then it went into, you know, forms of money, whether it's seashells or you know, yes, yeah, well, tulips is a different one, but yeah, like, you know, skin off an animal, and then we, you know, said, okay, well, gold became the acceptable thing, silver, precious metals. Then you know, then it was like, okay, well, I gotta carry this stuff all over. So then you know, you deposit that in a bank, and then they give you this deposit slip that's basically turned into fiat currency. And then, but so anyway, so fast forward, then you have the Wild West days where actually banks were taking your gold that may be like government money gold, but then they were giving you, you know, money for that. now it's kind of in a similar way where now anybody can launch their own currency and have their own economics behind that token or that coin that they're launching. And it's honestly like a bunch of like, really, it's this economic like experiments in a way. And it's really exciting. And there's different ways, especially like with Bitcoin, there's a 21 million coin cap. So there's a built-in inflation that's not set by the Federal Reserve just meeting every quarter and saying, oh, okay, we're gonna do this, we're gonna that, or Congress coming to the table and saying, oh, here's what was it, $2 trillion, whatever that, I don't even remember what the numbers are. It's just like, it's getting, just outlandish in clown world. It's built into the code where you can see you can actually make financial projections and understand like, okay, well, we're experiencing, Bitcoin, for instance, I think it's at like 1% inflation right now because the just happened last year. So it's just, it's really exciting times where now we have this free form of digital money that isn't centralized, that can't be stopped by just killing one person or shutting down one operation. It is worldwide. You
can't cut the head off the snake.
Yeah, and the technology and the idea behind just decentralized technology overall is out of the bag, and it really started with the internet. But yeah, here we are. And as far as it interacts with Float, I think we did go into this a little bit earlier, but yeah, every Float account comes with a Bitcoin wallet. We're adding other cryptos there. Easy as signing up with your email, and you can use money to send payments, obviously through the wallet. You can send payments through the messaging system that we built. You can send super chats through live streams. And we're
subscribe to people monthly.
Yeah, you can subscribe to people monthly. And we're adding Float markets this quarter. We're adding we just signed up actually up. It's not public yet, but we're adding merchants to our platform, so you'll be able to actually use crypto, actually in person a little easier.
Or online if you want to order online.
Or online. There's really cool stuff that we can do with decentralized tech that I haven't seen many people taking advantage of yet. I mean, there's ways where we can decentralize Uber, we can decentralize Airbnb, we can take the middleman out of all these industries and connect people peer to peer. And I think it's just very exciting.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and one thing that was important about your story is how banks create money. These bank notes. People would put their gold in a bank, and they would get these notes, and eventually banks are like, well, they never come back for the gold, so we're gonna have more notes than we have gold. And that's one thing people didn't. James Corbett talked about it back in the day. I remember Zeitgeist Addendum talked about it. A lot of people didn't realize that they're loaning out money that doesn't exist. They're literally creating currency, putting it in, our system, in our society, and that money is backed by nothing because it doesn't exist. You only have to have whatever percentage of that money in the bank.
And that's what people always say about Bitcoin, like the naysayers, like, oh, well, what is Bitcoin backed by? It's like math.
The market.
The market. Yeah, like it has value because people value it.
Well, that's what gives value to everything is how much somebody wants it. Yeah.
So it's just it's a cognitive dissonance, and it's almost like a stubbornness to like move on. I feel like they're like clutching to the thing that's dying, and either you can sink with the ship or you could float.
And then and that's the thing too, like a lot of these people that ask questions, it's fine, obviously you're gonna ask questions about a new technology and something like crazy like Bitcoin. The idea behind it is actually it's very interesting, but a lot of those times everyone who asks those questions, 99.999% have no idea how the current monetary system works either. So it's like, that's what I usually throw back to them. They're like, oh, Bitcoin, what is this thing? It just seems like, funny money. I'm like, well, do you have any idea how Federal Reserve note? Do you even know that it says Federal Reserve note on your the dollar bill that probably isn't even in your wallet because you just use your credit card?
Well, that's a really good point, because another thing that people say all the time, oh, cryptocurrency, oh, digital currency, like it sounds crazy and deranged to them. And I'm like, you do realize, and you said this, Kingsley, that like the majority of people don't actually physically have money on them ever anyways. So like you literally are using digital money all the time. So it's not like this huge transition, this huge like life change. It's like you already kind of use your online banking and apps and a debit card. Like you don't actually physically ever see the money. So why is cryptocurrency so hard to understand? It's like it's kind of the same idea. And then the value thing, you know, that people say, well, what gives it value? It's like, well, what gives a stock value? Same fucking thing. Like so you agree that this, you know, the stock market is okay and acceptable, but like this doesn't. So like you said, like a lot of the same concepts that they don't realize already using is the same concepts in Bitcoin. But you know, because I think, do you think the media has done a good job of like demonizing? I've had Ross's mom on, Lynn, and I think that, like, you know, the whole dark deep web thing kind of gave Bitcoin a bad name. Do you think that's like is it accidental, or do you think it's actually a strategy? Let's make it seem like this kind of anarchist, like, you know, only for criminals type of currency.
I think it's absolutely on purpose. I mean, people do more nefarious things with dollar bills or with Federal Reserve notes. You know, and that's not talked about. You know, like banks.
You can't roll up a Bitcoin and snort coke with it. I mean, come on.
Look at all the fraud and all the like everything that all the big banks do. Goldman Sachs, or you know, like J.P. Morgan Chase. Like these are all like the worst companies that what's the word I'm looking for? That are caught in fraud all the time with their, you know, using their money, you know, and yet, if God forbid you don't give the government your name and address when you buy Bitcoin. You know what I mean? It's just, I think it's absolutely on purpose. They are trying to demonize it, but there's going to come a time where they're not going to be able to deny it. And I think we're seeing that now with all the institutional partners kind of buying in.
Yeah, and that's the great, like I was saying, it's almost like a Trojan horse, because the Trojan horse is the price appreciation and the economic model that's been built into Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies out there. So now, you know, I know even in China, like I had some friends that were in mining operations in China, and they actually were paying off some of the local politicians in Bitcoin. So now, you know, as more and more people, including our enemies, regulators and everybody, they hold crypto. Well, now we all have a monetary incentive to promote this free currency that ultimately will destroy the very institutions that they've been protecting their whole lives and that they've relied on. So it's like, yeah, it's like this Trojan horse I like to think of, where the speculation drives the greed factor for most you know, people in the banking cartel and in other, you know, political cartels. But ultimately, it's going to, you know, in my opinion, provide a path forward to a more peaceful and prosperous world.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm on Float. I have a personal page and I have a Ripple Effect podcast page. How would I see that there's a location on the app, and when I'm on the web, I see that there's a location to like do a transaction, some financial transaction. How does that work? Like, how would I get like my money from my bank account or some type of physical money into Float, right? How does that transaction work?
Yeah, so we have, if you go to your Float wallet, you can actually buy BTC through with your, you know, your bank card, through a third-party provider. Right now, we're going to be adding other third-party providers. We want to make it as easy as possible for people to buy, earn, and use, you know, cryptocurrency. And we'll be adding a way, once we introduce more information about our native token. You know, you'll actually be able to buy that with your bank card, PayPal, other cryptocurrencies, and yeah. So, or you can go to a third party, you know, exchange, like, you know, I don't like this Coinbase. I don't like to promote them too much because they shut down 2 of my accounts for no reason in 2015. But they are one of the most easiest ways to get into crypto first.
And they're a good onboarding tool.
Yeah, they are a good onboarding tool. They are centralized, so you do want to make sure that any crypto you buy on there, you move it off
transfer out immediately.
Yeah, to a non-custodial wallet.
Ricky, our computer is gonna die. I did join the call with my phone.
I'm like, who's this other Aaron trying to?
Yeah. I just wanted to be. I don't want your stream to be disrupted.
We have 4% left, so I'm not sure how much longer we're gonna be going, but yeah.
Yeah, let me see if I click on that. So
I'll mute this and just let it run. Sorry, we were saying?
Oh, yeah. So there is a easy way of just like I could pay with a debit card or something like that to get some cryptocurrency, and then that transaction, you said I could actually, somebody else who has a float account or whatnot, we can have that transaction on float, no fees, no nothing. That's pretty wild. And so even with the live stream thing, you're saying like the super chats and that type of stuff, is that something that's you already have available, or is that it?
Yeah.
Yes, using Bitcoin. So keep in mind, when you do send Bitcoin on the platform, currently there are fees.
Well, for minor fees. So not
we don't take a fee, but you do have to pay a minor fee.
But that's one of the reasons why we're actually adding more cryptos, and including we're going to be, onboarding our own native token, is because our token is going to be able to provide off-chain transactions, so they're free and instant with no fees. And so that's going to be a big value add for our own token to be, on our platform. So we're really excited about that. And we're going to be releasing a lot more information about that this month.
But actually, you kind of got the exclusive.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. Has there been any pushback since, because you guys kind of are openly fighting back against, Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and whatnot? Have you seen any pushback or not yet?
Not really yet. We've been a little bit censored on Facebook. I know some people try to send like our URL and Facebook Messenger, and also like post it as comments on Facebook and YouTube, and they just just magically wouldn't show up or whatever.
Right. But besides that, I don't think so.
Yeah, our community's been really great. I mean, honestly, like I feel like a lot of the maybe rough around the edges crowd, they went to like initially Gab and other platforms, before we launched. So, we're still like kind of the newer guys on the block.
So we're gonna catch up quick.
Yeah. So we launched really like a year or multiple years after a lot of these other alternative platforms that have been out. We've also raised a lot less money, although that's changing now. So yeah, this year, like we have the funds available, where we have a growing like all-star team that we're building, and we're just going to be able to pump out a lot of features that we've been waiting to pump out. So I'm really excited.
It's gonna be a good year.
Every time I say really excited, I'm like really excited.
My co-host on the Union of the Unwanted, Mike, he's kind of our tech guy, and he talked about how your live stream is awesome. He's like, you guys really have an awesome live stream, because I know some of the other ones that he's used, alternative ones, have been kind of not very good. So that's awesome, and I'm constantly recommending you guys to people. I just had like Memory Hold on, who was a big YouTuber, and now is kind of getting off YouTube because of restrictions or whatnot. But I was telling him about, people are like, yeah, I like BitChute, but I can't live stream. I'm like, well, where you can live stream, I'm like, because a lot of people are using DLive or whatnot, but I'm like, you can kind of use Flote for all those purposes. You can post your stuff, you can live stream there. Actually, right before we started recording, I was on my FLOTE app, and I know that OBDM, which is Mike's show, he was live streaming on FLOTE. As every Wednesday and Saturday at noon, he live streams his show on FLOTE now and YouTube. So it is amazing how in such a short period of time you guys have gotten so much accomplished in regards to like all these features. I mean, do you guys sleep or
Man, I like it's not easy, I'll tell you that.
I think we definitely underestimated. Like, we knew it was going to be a challenge, and we knew social media was like the hardest industry to break into, but we definitely underestimated just how difficult it really is. There are days when I feel like our developers want to kill us, but at the end of the day, like, we're a team, and it's really like it's all on our devs. Like, they're amazing, they're fantastic. Like, having the team in place to really help us and support us and get us to where we need to be, I'm so grateful. Hiring in itself is not an easy feat, but I just feel like the universe has just put these people on our path, and we're so happy. I'm like moved to tears by them.
Yeah, and we just have like initially we launched with like really a 3 or 4 man team, and it was
so hard.
Yeah, it was a struggle to keep up. But now, yeah, we're up to I think 13 people now, and we're adding about like a person a month. So things are finally really starting to take off for us, and we're just going to be able to again just pump out a lot of features that we listen to the community too. We ask what you guys want, what should we prioritize? And that, that is one of the things that helps us stand out, is like live stream. So, what features of live stream, can we add to make floats really stand out amongst the competition and provide value for you, as a person, as a user, and for your users, or for your followers too,
Yeah,
so
that's something that was really important to me specifically, like, is just make sure we're always available to the community, to answer questions, to help welcome them onto Float. Like we both try to spend at least like an hour or two, especially at night, just kind of scrolling the Float feed and welcoming new users and answering people's questions. And if people are frustrated, then making sure we reach out to them and saying, hey, what's the problem? What can we do? I just think that kind of customer service attitude, especially like living in Las Vegas, it helps to kind of have that, because if you don't have good customer service in Las Vegas as a brick and mortar, then you're not going to survive. And I think that definitely extends well into the online businesses and social media. You have to be in your community to make it successful. You have to build what people want. So we love taking user feedback.
Well, it kind of reminds me, like we were talking about mom and pop restaurants, when the owner comes out and greets you and talks to you, you get the sense of like, oh, nice, I can put a face to the company, and I know who is getting my money, and he appreciates it. And if I have questions, he he's more willing to help me. So it's kind of similar to what you guys are doing. I mean, you're kind of like Tom from MySpace. He kind of said hi to everybody, even though that was probably not really him. But
we don't make you follow us, so yeah. I mean, that's the difference.
But if you want to, we're King and Erin at Float.
Tommy had like low self-esteem. He's like, I'm just gonna force people to be my, but yeah, that's interesting. So some people have been skeptical of like Bitcoin in regards to like, who created it. Have you guys ever went down those rabbit holes? Are you curious? Do you have any theories on like who might have been behind it? Because I think like even somebody like Richard Grove, who I'm a big fan of, and he's become a good friend throughout the years, somebody that I find really intelligent. He's like, I'm kind of skeptical about it, this and that, because we don't really know who's behind it or whatnot. And I think it's good to have some healthy skepticism about everything. But is there, you guys ever have any concerns like that? Or
well, the thing about it doesn't really matter who created it, because the military created the internet. And we can all agree that I think that the internet is a +1 for humanity. So the same thing with cryptocurrency. We have some ideas of probably a group of 4 people that did create it, that were highly involved with cryptography and encryption.
And just the cypherpunk world.
Yeah, and but it could have been the military again. It doesn't really matter, because the code is out there, it's open source, and the cat, again, just like the internet, the cat is out of the bag. So whether it's Bitcoin. I mean, honestly, like I question even just like Bitcoin remaining the king for all of time.
I think that's ignorant to think that Bitcoin will be the king. Yeah, you're just assuming that no better technology is going to come out and emerge. And I think that's a very limited thought. I think we are so beyond that point, it's inevitable. Like there will absolutely be a technology that will surpass Bitcoin and really push us to the next thing.
Yeah, but the more important part is that we're all out of this banking, this banking cartel system that they've set up to basically enslave humanity. Yeah. And so now we have a opportunity to an option for a financial opt-out, and cryptocurrency is that best bet right now. And even like when it comes to like, because I have like a wealth management background, and before when I learned about crypto, I was really into precious metals. So the first time I learned about it was like $2 or even less, and I just kind of dismissed it without looking into it further. But then if you think about like, there's a lot of people still like even Peter Schiff and other people, and they're like, well, precious metals better, and obviously like diversify. Yes, if we have no electricity and no internet or whatever, they shut everything down, or there's some sort of solar event or something, then you're going to want some hard real assets. But as far as like the modern world right now, there's no better way to transact with money compared to crypto. I mean, it's borderless. You can't walk across the border with $1 billion worth of gold or dollars,
or more than $10,000 because they'll take it. They'll literally confiscate it.
You can't send a wire for to certain countries, to certain people, to it's not efficient, and cryptocurrency is much more efficient. And regardless if like one crypto is bad, I mean, that's the thing about it. It's like it's the market again. Right. So you can launch your own, or you can choose another one, and there's enough out there to choose from. Right. So again, like the cat's out of the bag as far as the technology is concerned. So
but minor side note, we do have a dog named Satoshi, so
we have a Dogecoin dog. Yeah.
The thing is, like you said, it doesn't matter who made it or if it's the lasting one. The fact that like we've kind of proven that the technology exists, it can, something like this can be created, and it can be completely, not controlled by anybody and whatnot. Like, you can't unthink that, you can't undo that. And I think that for just society in general, I think it's a good thing, regardless if Bitcoin is the lasting one or the dominant one. I think that's a really good thing. And I love the open source idea. I remember watching the documentary back in the day, OS Revolution, about like programmers and software designers. All these guys were like, yeah, I want my shit to be free. It's like, I don't want, it's like Microsoft and all these people who cared much more about money than they cared about the actual software, wanted to patent things and whatnot. But a lot of the tech guys are like that. Like you said, these cyberpunks, I've had Douglas Ruskoff on quite a few times, and another guy, he kind of grew up in the cyberpunk era, and is big in this open source thing. And I love that idea, this idea of like, that's why my show's open source. I mean, I love the idea of like, just like, hey, I put out my work, anybody can do what they want with it, and then you can find other creative ways of if you want to financially get ahead, of making money, and not put restrictions on software or whatnot. So yeah, I love that. Is that one of the issues? I know you talk a lot about the Fed and that type of stuff. Do you guys, is that the issue that you think you're most motivated by, or is there other things also that you talked about doing research and whatnot? Is there certain issues that really like you're passionate about that are the ones that kind of keep you going and want to fight against big tech and censorship?
I mean, ultimately, it boils down to a bunch of things. I mean, I was brainwashed as a in high school after 9/11, and I joined the military because I thought that what was happening, the war on terror,
and even before that with your dad.
Yeah, and then also, my father has been in prison for a nonviolent drug crime since 1993 for a small cocaine charge. So he's working on his 28th year, and so I think about things like this, and they obviously they upset me, and I think like, okay, why in the world is my father serving at the taxpayers' expense for over $30,000 a year in Florida?
While Bill Clinton got to smuggle in as much cocaine as he wanted in Arkansas and then become the president of the United States.
So why do these types of systems exist? And it's again because they control the money supply, and they control also the tax system as well. So we, as more and more people make money in Bitcoin, move their out of fiat into cryptocurrency, we're going to move more into a voluntary society that doesn't rely on these centralized authorities telling us what we can and cannot do. And I believe humans, for the most part, are good people, and there's only really a select few that do evil and mean bad, or do whatever. Ill will. And typically those people are motivated by power and money and greed. So if we can take the printing press, the money printing press out of the hands of these people and move it back to the power to the people, then ultimately we'll move into a more peaceful and prosperous world. And that's the world that I want our kids to grow up in. And I don't want
Yeah, I've had Freeway Rick Ross on, and some people, I'm like, this guy was doing time for cocaine. The government was basically bringing in, you know, through Meta Arkansas, like Erin said, and you know, Barry Seal, and you know, if people aren't familiar with that story, I've definitely talked about it quite a bit on the show. But it's they don't give a shit about you. You know, I always say like that they're just a you know, they're basically the mob, only the strongest mob, because like many people say, you know, they have this monopoly on violence, you know, like my friend Adam Kokesh would say. And it's true. Like, you know, if I owe you money, I can't go to your house and then put a gun to your head and then throw you in a cell and say, hey, you're going to be in here until you pay me back. But they can't. You know, it's not fair. People have to realize that they don't care about you. They don't, you know, it's, to me, it's also weird how like a lot of the issues that I stand for, you know, I've had Adam Scorgi on to talk about the war on drugs, and you know, he did the Union movie about the business of marijuana and all this stuff. And it's like the government's trying to sell you this idea that marijuana is bad for you because, you know, they want their cut. They want to find a way to monetize it before they make it legal. And so it's all like, and those were people on the left, you know, the anti-GMO, the anti-Monsanto people. Those were all people that are like, we all agree, like, big pharma, big chemical, you know, the government will lie to you. You know, I've had Chris Bell on who did the movie Leaf of Faith and Prescription Thugs and Bigger, Stronger, Faster. But I had him on to talk about Kratom, and just like the government was demonizing Kratom, even though it's had no real negative side effects. And I mean, you could basically find somebody who could have a negative side effect on anything. I mean, look at peanut butter, right? I mean, if I everybody peanut butter, there's going to be some deaths. You know, somebody's going to die from peanut butter. It doesn't mean that peanut butter should be banned from the face of the earth. That's the same thing.
One death is too many. Okay.
Yeah. You know, so it's just one of those things where like most of these people could agree that the government will lie to you for their own interests, and all of a sudden it's like, no, you know, like they just want to give you a vaccine because they want to help you. You know, they want to give you, and it's like, wait, I'm standing in the same place. I stand for the same things I've always stood for. But the difference is like now where I stand, I see a lot more like people on the right wing instead of on the left wing. And I'm like, my views haven't changed, but like the people who are fighting for the same things I'm fighting for have changed. So it's you know, it's wild how like just people just they get so caught up in this political bullshit, you know, and they get so caught up with tribalism and joining a team, and it can be contagious. Like, you know, I was in the Hartford rally today, for our rights in Connecticut, and a lot of Trump supporters, a lot of anti-vaccine supporters, and I'm not anti-vax. I'm pro-information. I mean, personally, I'm not a fan of vaccines. You know, I wouldn't give my kids them, but I wouldn't ban them. I think people should have access to all the information, like we talked about before. Like, and people should come up with their own conclusion. If you believe that the risk of the vaccine is less than the risk of putting them in a natural world, then that's your choice. What makes me upset is people don't have those options. People don't have all the information to decide. You know, they're told that, you know, and religion or science has become the new religion, where it's like, oh, I believe in vaccines. What the fuck does that mean? I believe in vaccines. Like, you just believe in all vaccines? Like, even though that, you know, the same way that there's plenty of examples that bankers are and banks in general are criminals because they've gotten in trouble for fraud, for money laundering, for working with cartels and hiding money and doing all these dirty things. Like, they're criminals. So is big pharma, you know, and all of a sudden you're just going to trust them. Like, even though they've overprescribed. You want to talk about a epidemic? How about all the young people that were dying of pills? Now I'm getting passionate. Sorry, I'm getting worked up. The big pharma issue is one that I've been, you know, talking about quite a bit for a while now, and I feel like it's so important because it's deep rooted in our it infiltrates our personal lives, where like now you're trying to put a needle in our kids that, you know, hepatitis B, for example, like it's a sexually transmitted disease. Why does a 6-month-old need to have a hep shot? Well,
yeah. No, it is a huge issue. I mean, it's so funny because, like, you know, Uber, for instance, like, I remember when I was living in my apartment by myself, like a couple of years ago, Uber sent me a notification. They're like, oh, make sure if you want the flu vaccine, we'll send it over in an Uber. And it's like people actually think that this is there to help them. Like, the government wouldn't do anything to sit there and help. Like, there's got to be a drawback for this. I mean, to make something so readily accessible, you know, for very minimal cost. That's not like governments. It's very outside their character. But no, I mean, the vaccine issue is huge. You know, it's just bodily autonomy.
And people in the anti-big pharma type of world, like I've been for quite a while, that's been you know, a huge focus of some of my work. We've seen it for a while now. Like we kind of saw it coming, because you could see how powerful propaganda and mainstream media is in regards to selling you the idea that anybody who questions vaccines is a conspiracy theorist and the science is settled, even though like on the inserts on the vaccines it says it could cause this, could cause that, could you know, and like I said, like even just like the most unscientific thing you could say is that all vaccines are safe, because nothing is safe to everybody. Like I said before, I use this example all the time. Like if I gave every child peanut butter, some kids are gonna fucking die. Like it doesn't, like, so this idea that you can, something as like harmless as peanut butter could kill kids if I give them to everybody. What makes you think if I give every single kid the exact same cocktails of ingredients, to put it directly in their veins and in their bloodstream, and think that like every kid's gonna have a positive reaction to it? Like that's just absurd.
And just to circle back, like with just you know, big tech, and yeah, I mean, like what did CEO of YouTube said? You can't say that vitamin C is good for you. You know, you can't talk about vitamin D, natural remedies. My mother cured my grandfather, her father, of late stage skin cancer on the face with cannabis, with RSO. And so, you know, it's like, you know, they've been hiding this information, these natural remedies. They've been hiding it. They've been making it illegal, and just so they can recreate their own substance and sell it to us out of you know, the pharmacia. And
they stand behind this oath of do no harm.
Yeah, and you know, and yeah, and again, like with the brainwashing and propaganda, I mean, it's now infiltrated into the education system. It doesn't matter, you know, most doctors I talk to, that like I don't even like going to see the doctors, because honestly, like, you know, I know I don't have a PhD and I'm not a doctor, but there's a lot of things that I feel that I know a lot more than they do, because you can ask them things, especially about like natural remedies or anything like that, and they have no clue. Or even ask them about stuff regarding Corona, and they'll just, you know, just all they're spewing is the stuff they see on CNN or whatever, or, you know. So so a lot of these people, they don't, these aren't researchers, these aren't people that have used the internet to their advantage to look into different topics and things that of their interest. They've just been spoon-fed things from the, you know, educational institutions, and you know, all these things have been co-opted. And so now it's our time, like in order to have, you know, to help humanity get farther than it is, like we have to get past this point and help educate people, because, you know, just like that's the big thing that Ron Paul always said, like it only takes about 20 years. If we have educated children, then you know, by the time that they're adults and they know the truth. And that's the one thing, the advantage about internet, is that now children are able to look things up themselves and learn by themselves, or question authority, you know, when they come home from the teacher. Oh, that seems kind of weird, or I'm going to research this topic. They can look into it and find probably much different facts that are in government, you know, school books. So that's why I think that there's this whole thing with censorship now on the internet, because they are trying to hide all this information that can help us.
Yeah.
Versus you know. Yeah.
Okay, so like two things I want to kind of circle back to. Did you know that now schools are saying that if parents opt in to send their kids to school, that they can vaccinate the children without parental consent?
Yeah, I've talked about it in the show. And so in DC, they had this bill where 11-year-olds could consent to vaccines, and they don't have to tell the parents. So that kid could get some type of reaction, right? I mean, the kid, and they're like, well, they inform the child by giving them a form that chances are came from some pro-vaccine organization or government or big pharma itself, that says vaccines are good. You know, like, hey, this is what you're getting. This is what we're gonna save you from. That kid could literally go home that day, the next day, you know, whenever, and have some type of reaction to it, and never put two and two together that, like, hey, maybe it was that vaccine, because they're told that vaccine's safe and effective, and the purpose of it is to prevent disease and not make you sick, not to, you know. So to a child, it sounds kind of silly, but to a child, they might not pick up on that, which means they might not tell their parents, which means, you know, the parents just think it's a random sickness. But this idea that you can go to the you know, you can only go to military at 18, you can only do, you know, drink at 21 in America, and yet at 11 you can decide to get a vaccine. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, it's 1984. It's you know, it's not about science anymore. This is the thing that drives me nuts. I live in Massachusetts, and you know, dictator Baker over here is just like the fact that like he just makes new regulations all the time, and go, you know, once we go a step forward, he'll go 3 steps backwards. And it's not, it doesn't even have to be backed by science anymore. Like, it's not, before it was like, at least you made a attempt to kind of give me some bullshit excuse, like you said, hey, it's because of you know, we you know, if you're 6 feet away from people, then it prevents this much spreading or whatever. Now it's just like, yeah, everybody has to wear a mask in public. And in Massachusetts, we have to. Like, there's a law that they, or not a law, but he proposed order because, you know, we're in a state of emergency or whatnot, so apparently Constitution can go out the window and all our freedoms can go out the window. So a order that we all have to wear a mask in public. Like, even if you're by yourself, like, does that sound like it's about science? Does that sound like you're preventing the spread of anything? No, it's not. It's about authority. It's about a power trip. Like, I tell people all the time, like, you could work at a workplace and some guy who complains about the asshole supervisor or boss or whoever it is, once he gets that power, sometimes it goes to his head and he becomes that asshole, you know. And once you give somebody authority, they never want to give it back. And that's the thing. Like, you know, I forget who said on my show, like, that, you know, we're still taking our shoes off when we go to the airport, even though there hasn't been a terrorist attack in forever, you know. And it's
we're still putting our water bottles or whatever liquids into the trash can that's right by the long security line that probably has more people on it than most flights. It's just like,
it makes no sense. So it's like, the second you give that authority, you never get it back. And you know, and it's that quote, you know, anytime you give up freedoms for security, you gain neither and lose both. And it's exactly what's going on. You see it, you know, in April last year, you know, it's like, oh, if we just lock down for a little bit, if we just do this, and it's like, now, you know, they just keep moving the goalposts, where it's just like, now we just do this. And that's why people like yourself, Kingsley, and I would also talk to people, and we could see like where this was going. We're like, you can't give him this authority, because the second you do, it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. And this idea of like, well, nobody could have prepared for this bullshit. Like, look at Event 201, which was like scripted in like 2018, put together late 2019. And I mean, they literally predicted this exact event. So this idea that we couldn't prepare for this, I mean, it's similar to like 9/11, where, you know, Bush says, oh, I could have never predicted planes going into a tower, and then yet he had papers saying that they were, you know, potentially thinking of doing that. You know, and then that's a whole nother rabbit hole itself, the whole 9/11 thing. But it's you know, it's the same type of brainwashing, like you said, when you went to the military. I mean, Adam Kokesh says it, where he's like, when people thank him for his service, he like almost gets upset. He's like, no, don't thank me. He's like, I was brainwashed, I shouldn't, you know. And you look at like General Smedley Butler, war is a racket, you know, a very important historical figure that should be taught in schools, which isn't, you know. And because same thing, he was brainwashed in believing that he was fighting for the freedoms of people back at home and whatnot. And that's not the case. You know, they're lying to us, they're brainwashing us. And the thing that makes us human, and that's the thing about technology. Like, technology is great. There is a whole nother conversation about, like, you know, the Great Reset and transhumanism, and like trying to become too digital that we lose what makes us human. But the elite know that what makes us human is our emotions. It's our, like you said, most of us are good people. We care about one another. And you know, it's they know how to manipulate those things. Like, see towers go down, how do you not get passionate about wanting to do something about that? You know, see hospitals filled, how do you not get passionate about, like, you know, put on a fucking mask? Or, you know, because the thing is, I do think even people who I would consider, like, you know, completely on the other side of where I am on so many topics, I do give them the benefit of the doubt that they might have good intentions. They might have just been tricked. They might have just been, you know, it's like that quote, it's easier to trick somebody than convince them they've been tricked. it's so true. Like, how do you convince them that, like, hey, you've been brainwashed, you've been, and their heart might be in the right place, even with the, the Black Lives Matter movement. Like, there's people who truly, and racism is a issue. I don't think it's to the extent that they think, and I also think that they really don't have a plan on how to resolve this, or how to, it's like, wait, defund the cops. Like, you do realize, like, even though some cops do some bad shit in some poor areas, they also prevent some bad shit in some poor areas. They prevent some drive-bys, they prevent your kids being addicted to drugs because they get them off the streets or whatnot. So this whole idea of, like, just pigeonholing anybody, like, one bad cop represents all cops, but yet you, in reverse, you don't want one minority to represent all minorities, one bad minority. I'm Portuguese. Like, if one shithead Portuguese person does something stupid, I hope people don't think all Portuguese people are assholes.
Well, after this podcast, I hate Portuguese.
Yeah.
But it's people are so, I'm going on a long rant myself with no question, but these topics, yeah, I mean, they're things that that's, and this, I guess, to bring it back, like, this is what makes your platform so important, is because it is backed by people who really care about freedom, and people just having the right to speak their minds and share their research, and have these discussions, because that's the most important thing. It's like a platform where you can actually have discussions, and everybody's being heard, because that's the thing. Even though, like, people might have heard your perspectives and opinions on certain topics during this discussion, people you disagree with aren't going to be censored in your platform, even if you do disagree with them. And that's the important difference.
We get the question, like, well, how do you guys feel about, like, Flote being an echo chamber? We get that question a lot. And at the end of the day, I think Facebook is actually more of an echo chamber, because they're just censoring all the voices. I mean, at least Flote is open to free discussion. Like, you can, that's pretty much my point.
Well, yeah. Well, I think I said it in the beginning of the show, where, like, people talk about PARLER being, a right-wing echo chamber, but you can make the argument that, like, Twitter is a left-wing echo chamber. You can make that all these mainstream places are just echo chambers of the ideology of big tech. So, and the thing is, like, the important thing is, like, if it's an organic echo chamber, because, like, people who are being censored on these platforms are all migrating there first, yeah, that's going to make sense. Like, of course, the people who are being censored first are going to look for the alternatives first. So, yeah, you're going to get maybe the majority of those people. But the important thing is that, like, you're not censoring anybody. So, like,
right. I'd rather be somewhere, and be able to have a free flow conversation. Well, instead of going on Facebook and, me commenting on a very leftist post, maybe someone's promoting mandatory vaccines and I say something against that, and then I'm censored. I mean, that's the definition of an echo chamber, is when they're blocking differing opinions. So yeah, it's just, I just go with the free speech, the free speech options, folks, because you have to defend something in your life. So it's got to be to speak your mind freely. I mean, it's absolutely crazy that people are changing speech on these platforms to avoid being kicked off. I mean, changing words.
Well, I'm also a big fan of Ron Paul. When he was running, I was a huge fan of his. And so many times people would be like, "Oh, but his views are extreme," and I'm like, "What the fuck? Like, have you listened to his views? Like, what? Like, the elite, the system we've created has done such a great job of like, we all acknowledge that it's broken and needs fixing, but then we scare you into believing that anybody that is drastically different than what we already have, which we acknowledge is the issue, is too extreme to be president, or his views are too extreme to
I think we're extreme right now. We need to get actually less extreme. And I think through these ideas like Ron Paul and others, it's actually returning more to, like, normalcy in the way that humans are supposed to behave and act in a community or even individually. So it's it's been clown world for a while, and ultimately, I think the responsibility falls on, obviously, us, And, past generations too, I mean, they had enough time to really, step up and change things where it was needed. But it's getting to now a crucial point in time where, good men and women have to do good things to provide a future for, for our children. And that's, ultimately like what we're focused on helping to create.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know you, like we said before, you probably haven't slept much and you're very busy. But I want to thank you guys so much for coming on, for sharing, your personal experiences, your stories, and to answer some questions about Flote that people listening might have. Definitely check out the app, check out the website, FLOTE.app. I'll put links in the show description. You'll be able to find this show on Flote and among other places. And thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate your time, and keep up the great work. I'll keep suggesting you guys to other content creators, and hopefully, the way, if you look at successful people who really accomplish something in life, they usually have a couple things. Like, one, they have a good work ethic. They're motivated, and two, they're passionate. And you guys have both of those things. So I definitely can see the platform growing and great things coming to your business, and hopefully you guys make some money doing it because you deserve it. So
thank you so much. We appreciate it. And then I wanted to point out that you being a content creator and you sharing your content in so many different sites, Flote actually just went live with our embed feature, so now you're able to embed Flote posts on other sites.
Or your own website. And then and also, thank you for all the work that you do too. I mean, through this podcast and the Wanted, especially Union and the Wanted, I think it's such a killer idea, just bringing all these voices together, and having this platform where everybody can speak their mind and talk about solutions. And so I just wanted to say I really appreciate your work.
Thank you. Yeah, I think both are necessary. I have the privilege of being able to do both, where I think these one-on-one conversations where people can really get to know you guys as people in a more intimate manner, I think is super important. But then I think it's also important to gather minds, the wisdom of crowds, and just gathering people. And, if you get a team, like you said, like behind a lot of great ideas is usually a pretty good team. It's just, you bring people together who are intelligent or creative thinkers, and you can kind of riff off one another. It's like, well, I have this idea, and it's like, well, that's not perfect, but we could tweak it this way, or we could do, so we can all help each other. And starting that community to me is super important. And when we made it its own show, that was like one of the most important things. Was like, okay, before it was just kind of like this other extra show that I was doing, and with the other guys, and once we made it its own thing, I'm like, we had to all acknowledge that. I'm like, listen, the show is more important than anything, and we have to continue making it a community and bringing different perspectives and opinions. And I think the important thing is what people find is that we're all fighting for the same thing. Look, when I brought up Ron Paul, that's one thing that I would constantly do with people. I'm like, okay, well, what do you like believe in? What are you passionate about? And then you'd be like, oh, see, like this is very similar than the things that Ron Paul's fighting for. You think like anti-war hippies in the 60s, you think that's like a lefty thing. Well, guess what? Nobody's been more consistent anti-war than Ron Paul, and he's a libertarian. So it's like a lot of times, you realize that people you don't think are on your team are actually on your team. If you're fighting for those basic things, I don't give a shit if we disagree on specific ideologies or whatnot. If we're fighting for freedoms, and we're fighting for, against, even if it's government corruption or corporate corruption or whatever it may be, then we can differ in some things, and we shouldn't, because that's, I think, one of the issues the alternative media had for a while, where we would turn on one another. It's like, oh, we disagree on this one thing, so he's a fraud, or he's a shill. It's like, Sam Tripoli talks about it all the time, how like, people are always calling him a shill because of this or because of that, and it's just like, listen, if you're a sincere person and you have ideas, like, we don't have to agree on everything. And I want my ideas to be challenged, because that's how I figure out if my ideas are really concrete, and if
that's how you find your truth.
That's how we grow.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you learn the most talking to people that sometimes you disagree with, that are going to challenge.
I was a Democrat
until she met me.
Yeah.
He's brought a lot of good change in your life, Erin.
Absolutely.
And she's done the same with me.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, guys, and I'm sure we'll definitely keep in touch in the near future. And like I said, keep up the great work.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ricky.
Thank you.
Guys, have a great night.
Bye,
You
you
too.
too.